one thing that I like about having you guys do video presentations is that I get to show you, or gives me a chance to show you some of my favorite online video stuff. And this one right here is probably my favorite show or series or whatever on online right now. And it's a sports show. It's called Pretty Good. It's about stories that are pretty good. Um, Basically, this guy, his name is John Bois. He takes sports stories and he makes these weird videos about them. But they're not normal sports stories. They're stuff that you never heard of, and they're weird and they're different. And then he makes these crazy videos. And I want to show you just a little bit of example so you can get an idea of what his stuff looks like. But I really encourage you, if you're into this stuff, check it out. You can just Google Pretty Good John Bois, and you can find his stuff. All of these, I've seen them all. They're great. So this is a good example of how he's really creative with video, I think. So I wanted to show you this. This is one about the Olympic marathon, but I like what he does here.
Hello. I bought you a present. Go on, open it. Why won't you open it? Oh, right, here. I'm so sorry. I'll do it. Look, it's a board game. The 1904 St. Louis Marathon. It was very expensive. I bought it at this store. Oh, goodness, that's rude of me. I'm sorry. Would you like to play? Yeah, let's play. I guess that's the board. Some eggs, a couple of apples, a couple of bottles of brandy. Oh, here's the rule book. How to play. Yeah, what are the rules for marathons anyway? Oh, okay, you know what? Oh, hey, looks like they threw in a couple expansion decks. Lucky us. Good ideas expansion deck. Let's see. Safety, sportsmanship, proper hydration, sobriety. We're not going to need any of these. 1904 Olympics. Oh, well, yeah, let's see what these Olympics were all about. 4 months long? What? Oh my god. You know what? Let's not use those. If you want to read more about that, I'll send you some links when we're done. Cool? Alright, cool. Alright, let's bust out this board. This was the route of the 1904 Olympic Marathon. These streets still exist in suburban St. Louis today, most of them with the same names. The runners ran a few laps around the track at Francis Field, then out onto Forsyth, south on Merrimack and Brentwood, west on Manchester, north on Ballas Road, east on Clayton, north on what is now Lindbergh Boulevard, east on Olive, south on North and South, and then back on Forsyth to cross the finish line back at Francis Field. Or at least, that was the plan.
So this whole VoiceThread right here is about how you can do a good job making good video presentations. There's really one basic question that I'm trying to give you the answer to, and that's how are video presentations the same as an academic presentation that you would give in the class, and then how are they different? And another thing that I really want to do here is give you some examples, both from myself and from things that I found to show you how they work. But this is my presentation on making good video presentations, and I hope this helps you as you work on your final projects. The first and probably the most important way that the video is the same as a presentation is you're both doing academic English. And as this quote from Uribe shows, a lot of what academic English means is knowing how the language works when you're talking about something academically. And some of that is vocabulary, some of that is the way you organize ideas, some of the way that you're specific about what your thesis is and the evidence that you have to support it. As you know, academic English is very explicit, and you have to really say what your ideas are and to demonstrate them for the audience. Some of that is how you use sources, right? Academic work really requires you to draw on other sources and show how that works with your ideas. So it's an academic thing, and it needs to use the conventions of an academic presentation. However, that doesn't mean it has to be boring, right? You can still have fun. You should still really focus on making things interesting, and you can even be playful, especially with video, while still doing those things that make it academic English. I think that's a good point to keep in mind. So another thing that's the same between video presentations and normal academic in-class presentations is they all have three parts. They have an introduction, they have a body, they have a conclusion. This is pretty simple, but it's really important, and it's important not to forget this as you're switching to video. The introduction has a very clear job. Its job is to get your attention, let people know what you're going to talk about, and give them a little bit of preview about what you're going to cover. The body, and this doesn't really match the picture, but the body is the biggest part. The body has the meat of your stuff. It has information from your research. It'll have clips from your interview. It'll have you explaining stuff, making connections. It's the meat of the presentation where you really you show the answer to your research question, and that's what you do in the body. But it still needs to be connected. You still need to use transition words to make it fit all together, but that's the body. And then finally, you'll wrap up with the conclusion. And the conclusion lets people know that you're done, kind of summarizes what you've talked about. And then this is important too. It needs to end with a really strong final point. You want to have a nice close in your presentation, and that's what you do in the conclusion. So just like a normal presentation in class, you have three parts that you give: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. So I talked about introductions, and I think introductions might be something that we kind of forget to do in a video because it seems more clear and it seems easier. But I think it's really important that you start interestingly and not just say, this is my topic, this is what I want to talk about. And I want to give you an example. This comes from Crash Course, and it's just a simple little introduction to a topic. They use a picture, which I think is a great way to do this, and then they go into that. So I want to show you this just to keep in mind that you need to have something interesting as a way to introduce your idea, even though this is a video.
This image is called the Blue Marble, and it was taken in 1972 during the Apollo 17 mission. It has become a symbol not only of cool space travel, but the environmental movement back here on the ground. Think about it, when you're on the Earth, it seems pretty dang big and solid, but when seen from far above, it's just a blue marble flecked with beautiful green, inspiring, isolated, and not really all that big. And thanks to technologies like air travel and the internet, and to a booming human population, it keeps feeling smaller, and thanks to technologies and a booming human population, it keeps losing all those all-important green flecks. Today, our topic is the history of climate science, which leads to some dark questions about the future of life on Earth.
I think that citing things is a really important thing that you need to remember to do. And this slide gives you some ideas of information you can use that you need to have a citation, obviously where it comes from, either that be the author or the periodical or organization or whatever it is that comes. But I think one thing that's really important to remember too is you have to give it authority. You have to explain to us somehow why this is a good source for you. And that can be because of who the person is. You can tell who the person is, or it can be where the information comes from, right? And a lot of this depends on what type of information that you're giving. But for example, if you use somebody who's famous, we might know why they're a good expert. But if you use an expert, say an academic in a field, maybe you can give either, like this is the name of the journal this was published in. That helps us understand that it's good information. Or you can explain a little bit about who he is. That helps us understand what that is. And I'll try to do that later as I talk about multimedia, so you can see some examples of that. But don't forget to cite the sources. It can be as informal as you want. I think sometimes people get a little too bogged down in the details, but you can just kind of talk to us and explain to us where this information comes from. And that'll help us understand why this source has authority and works for this presentation. So that's a little bit of information about how a video presentation is the same as a traditional academic presentation like this that you would give in class. But I want to also spend the rest of the VoiceThread talking about how they can be different. And I want to go through a little bit of research and what research says about this, and then I want to give you some examples from the sources that from some of the things that I like, and also from myself, and then also just give you some hints on what you can do to make your video work. Again, I really want to encourage you to be as creative as you can as you're doing this. And there's a lot of things that you can do, and I hope I can show you some good examples of that. This is a quote from a sociology professor who wrote an article in 2005 about what happened when he started using more multimedia stuff in his class, both videos and stuff on Blackboard, which is like NYU classes. And I think he makes a really good point here. Technology is not just a way that you can get information to people, but it's a social process. It involves your relationship with the people that are watching your video. And that seems weird because you seem distant because of the technology, but I think in a lot of ways, technology can make us seem closer. So I want you to keep that in mind as you're making that. Think about who you're making it for and what that means as how it affects what you're doing. And I do want to point out, this guy, he did a study where he compared students' reactions after he started introducing more videos and more multimedia content. And he found that students' perceptions of both the instructor and what they were learning went up in a significant measure. They felt more of a connection to the class, and they felt more of a connection to the material. And I think video, when it's done well, can really help that. I think it involves a level of intimacy with the person that can have good results. And this study certainly found that in 2005. More on that. This is from the Center for Teaching and Learning at Columbia University in New York City. I think this is a good point. When you produce stuff with more of a personal feel, it's a lot more engaging than something that's very professional or formal. And some things that you can do, some advice this website gives: be conversational, speak quickly. When you are on the video, make sure you look directly at the camera. It makes it look like you're looking with the people watching your video. And be enthusiastic too, have fun. People see that and it makes them feel better about what they're watching. Hi again. The first thing, obviously, with a video presentation is that you're working with images and you're working with moving images, and sometimes. And I think you need to be aware of that. And I want to just give you some examples of different things you can do with information to make it visual. Because, and again, this is what research I have found from Mayer, this guy who studied multimedia stuff. When you combine words and images, it really helps people understand things and remember things better. So think about how you can be creative in using words and images and have them come together to make sense. First, I just want to focus on the images and show you some cool things that I saw people have done with PowerPoint, and then I want to show you how they can work together with words and other information. Here's something from Pretty Good. One thing that the guy who makes this likes to do is use Google Earth to kind of show movement and to give an idea of where things are. But it's kind of a weird thing he does, just kind of to give some visual flair to what he's talking about. Here's an example of that in a story about a Korean baseball player.
So, it's May 16th, 2005. The Mets lead the Reds 9-2. Koo enters the game in the 8th, and with the game pretty much well in hand, Mets manager Willie Randolph decides to go ahead and let Koo hit for himself in the bottom half of the inning, right? Now, this is Koo's first plate appearance in Major League Baseball. Over the 4 seasons prior, he played in Japan's Pacific League, and he never made a single plate appearance there either. Before that, he spent 12 seasons in the Korean Baseball Organization. Again, 0 plate appearances. This man has not picked up a baseball bat in a professional capacity in his entire life.
Finally, I want to show you an example of how you can show data, graphical information, visually. And again, John Baugh, the guy who does Pretty Good, he's really good at this. And even if you're not into sports and don't like videos, you can get some interesting ideas on how you can show how you can show data visually. And this is a good example. This is back to the Olympic story, and he's talking a little bit, some background information about the marathon before he goes to talk on to all the crazy things that happened.
Of the men's Olympic marathon, 1,421 runners have finished with a time they bothered to record. They're represented on this bar, ranked from best time to worst time. The champion of this 1904 marathon ranks here. Just consider how absurd that is. The guy who won this marathon was slower than 98% of the finishers of every other marathon. In fact, he was really slow. These are the finish times of every Olympic marathon champion. These days they usually take somewhere between 2 hours 15 minutes. Older marathons took longer, but none took nearly as long to decide as the 1904 marathon, which was nearly a half hour longer than every other marathon on record. Now, every marathon has its share of dropouts. Usually about 75 to 80% of runners slated for a marathon actually finish it. In 1904, 41 runners were entered into the marathon. 9 didn't show up. Only 14 actually finished. That's a finish rate of
The last thing that you want to keep in mind is when you're showing yourself, you want to make sure you look good and sound good. And I just have some hints on how you can do that wherever you're making a video, either for VoiceThread or just to make a video together. And this video would give some advice on those things. The thing that's really important as you're doing this is to have good lighting. So I want to show you a couple of things here. One, I got my phone right here shining a light in my face. You can see my face is a lot brighter. 2, I got light behind me. Right there, you can see that light right there. I shut the curtains back there because I didn't want too much light to come in here. And my background has a little stuff. It's not super boring, but it's also not super distracting. So those are some things you can do to make your video look better. Also, kind of hard to do this. I got a fan right there. It's hard to point. I got a fan back there and a dehumidifier. I turn them off so they wouldn't be loud and so they wouldn't be distracting in the background.